Hi, and welcome to a special Rigonomicon.com video. This video is primarily intended for my students that are just doing their final assignment for the class that I'm giving at Dawson. But now, for anybody else that's watching this can be very handy because basically the assignment is simple. You take a mesh, you build a skeleton, you skin it, you make a minimal rig that can allow you to animate. It's still functional, so it's still good. It's a viable rig. And then the other thing is we're going to transfer mocap onto that minimum rig without breaking the rig. So everything stays the same, everything still keeps working. And that's a very good assignment to have as a final assignment, because at that point you are independent and you can build on top of that, and anything that you need to do for animation, at least you have that starting point that works for you. Okay, so for this assignment I will be using as many things as possible that are core to Maya, like plugins and things like that. I will try to avoid using any bacon strip specific plugins, even though the preheat method that I'm going to be using, which is a form of baking, but without baking right away, it sets it up so that it can transfer mocap eventually without breaking the rig. Anyways, aside from that, I'll be using mostly Maya related things. And the other thing to note is that even though that's true, I do have some scripts that streamline the process a little bit. So for those of you that are my students and that are watching this, if you go to the About Bacon Strip, you're going to find that this is version 17 that I'm using, 0.17. It's May 16th, 2024 version. And there's a number of little things that I've added to make life easier and to improve things that have been improved since the last time you used it. So I will go over them when it comes time to use it, and I'll explain what it's doing. For everybody else, please know that whenever I use a tool that's here, just know that for the most part, you're going to be able to find it in places like, for example, the match tool is just match transformations with a couple of extra features that make life a little easier. And I'll explain what those are as we go. All right, so with that in mind, let's build this basically the hard way. So we're going to be building it from scratch, and let's see if we can get something that is functional and useful for us within a short little while. This is probably going to be two videos. The first video is going to be just placing bones, naming them, skinning them, and setting ourselves up for the second video, which is going to be the setting up a quick and easy MVP rig, setting it up so it can receive mocap, and then actually transferring mocap onto it. So with all that said, let's start this right, and let's start building our skeleton. Now, just for reference, I have brought in the Unreal mannequin, and the whole purpose of this being here is for us to put it aside, and maybe let's do a select a hierarchy here. I just did a right click on that. I'm going to toggle the local rotation axis. You can find that in the display settings. The local rotation axis allows us to see each joint's. I'm doing a focus here so we can see that the z-axis is pointing up, the y-axis is pointing to the back, and the bone is pointing to its child using the x-axis. All right, and if you don't know about the golden rules of rigging, please go to rigonomicon.com, check out the golden rules. There are some best practices there, and I explained why they're best practices in the other section called Rigging Basics. And I go through a lot of trouble to describe the reasons why we do these things, why we use the z-axis as the first thing that you animate on, and why the x-axis points to the child. There's a lot of rigs out there that don't get that right, I'll have to say very clearly, and they try to fix things by switching rotation orders and stuff like that. Anyways, it's a long story. Just know that there's a lot of thought involved in each one of these golden rules, and we did a thorough investigation on each one of these. So we're going to be following those golden rules. And if you're one of my students, you know that those golden rules have helped us in the past. Okay, so in order to create a skeleton, normally what I do is I go to create a joint, and I just create one on the floor. In this case, I've actually scaled this character so that they're the correct size, and I'm not using the Maya default, which is based on decimeters. Here we're actually in centimeters, so things are going to be tiny, You're going to notice some things don't work exactly the way you'd expect them to because we're actually to scale in centimeters. So yeah, I won't go too much into detail with that. Just say that let's just say that if I were to bring this into Unreal, I'd have no issues with the scale. Everything would be fine. I mean, the Unreal mannequin is right next to this character, and they're about 2 meters in height, or 6 feet, just beyond 6 feet. And Lanky here is about 160 centimeters high. There he's built to scale, and if I wanted to bring this into Unreal, I would just need to make sure that this root joint, which will now have a local rotation axis, so we can see what's going on, needs to point upwards. So I know what rotation value is necessary for this. I've done a lot of y up, z up conversions. Let me introduce you to the minus x 90 degrees on the x-axis rotation. By pressing J, I'm going to be able to snap my rotations, and I will be able to get my z-axis to point up, x to the right, and y to the back. This is more of a top view type setup where, like a floor plan, you have your x and y on the floor, and the z is the up axis. That's what Unreal is using. And apparently this has to be done before you do your bind skin, because if not, it's very, very difficult to get that updated for the FBX exporter specifically. This is not a Maya issue. This is an FBX exporter issue. So keep that in mind. So I'm going to set the radius to 10. And any character that you ever want to bring into an engine like Unreal, please make sure your root node, which we will call this root, right? Because it's a root node. Your root node is Z up before binding. It's important to do that because it's a real hassle to fix all that after you've done this. Okay, so now the next thing I'm going to do is I don't do hierarchies until I've finished placing all of my my bones for the most part. So this will be, and you can do a reference, like you can just check the one over here and say, okay, the next one I'm doing is called pelvis. And if I focus in on that, the pelvis is, in the case of Unreal, what they do is they put it almost as if it's the center of mass of the pelvis. So if this pelvis was flying in space, it would be rotating on this point. That's the best way I can describe it. So if you can imagine Lanky Kong's pelvis, which is quite large, this is roughly the middle of it. The other thing that you'll notice is that quite often, especially for mocap skeletons, they just do a hierarchy starting from this point all the way up, and then they have the legs almost right next to that point. And that doesn't mean that this is going to determine our range of motion later. Later, we're going to be setting it up so we can have like a center of mass at the belt line. It doesn't matter. We're still going to be okay to do this kind of thing. And I'm going to make a small adjustment for my students to know that I'm going to make a small adjustment to show you a more, like you can use the other method that we did in the other videos. It's fine. There's no wrong answer in any of this. So we'll be fine. Okay. But in this one, I will make it so that the center of mass is over here where the belt line is, because I'm going to be making this a little bit lower. You don't have to do that. It's fine if you use the other method from the Stormtrooper exercises. Okay, so now what we need to do is get that x-axis to point up based on our golden rules. So if I go to rotation and I hold J, I'm just going to rotate this up like so. We can see it's minus 90 and 90, which means it is flush. It's 90 degrees. There's no shenanigans with 65 degrees or anything like that. If I look here, I'm going to notice that basically that is what it's doing. The Z is on the left. X is pointing to the child node, which is going to be spine 01, and the y-axis is always seems to be pointing to the back when it comes to the left side of the body. So that's something to keep in mind. For the most part, we're going to have Z on the left as we go up. And one thing you're going to notice is that for whatever reason, I'm not a big fan of this. Having the torso this high up, if this is the sternum here, it should be just about here. I would put it around here. And then this would be a little bit lower, and then we could have more of a, especially when it comes to a spine, most of your motion, most of the motion from a spine is much lower than it is higher. We move our spine more at the bottom, so I would probably put a bias more towards the bottom and make sure that the torso is got a solid mass We're not doing the Pac-Man chest. So here we have pelvis that's correctly applied. And just going to move this up so that it goes along the belt line. This is roughly the belt line here. I think that would be good. And we're going to call this spine _01. And I'm going to go straight to the sternum, maybe just a tiny bit higher, not much, just so it's a little bit more like the Unreal setting. And this is going to be spine 03. And then over here, the one in between these two, you can eyeball that to be spine 02. That's not a problem. And now we're gonna take care of where it is in this space. So if I grab root all the way here in the outliner, we can move them all at the same time, and we can move them more towards the back. Remember, the spine bones are actually very close to the back, hence the spine, or the thing we call back. But when we're dealing with skin deformation, like for example, I always use this as a reference. Our neck has 7 vertebrae, right? So we don't actually make 7 bones in the neck. We only put 1, and then the head is on top of that. So most of this is an approximation of reality. It's more of what makes it look like what we're expecting, not so much let's make it exactly the way it should be in real life. So the general rule that you need to remember, or at least my suggestion to you, is that the more you're in the smack in the middle for a deformation, the more of a bendy kind of macaroni effect that you're going to get. The more you're in the place where you're supposed to be, where anatomy tells you should be, like around there type of thing, except for the pelvis. But all of this would be closer to the back. What it would do is you'd have some really nice deformations in the back, and then in the front you'd have some wildly messed up stuff, because there's a lot of distance to cover, and you end up getting what I call the cheese grate effect, where it looks like something's cutting off the other end. And it's going to be okay in the place where it's pinching, but it's really going to stretch out the other part when you rotate. So generally speaking, you don't follow necessarily the exact anatomy. Aim for something that will give you the better deformation. In the case of a spine, I generally find that aligning it more towards where the shoulders are is generally where you want to be, right? So because it's a little bit closer to the spine, so you're getting some of that anatomy, and you're still more or less in the middle of the body, which means the skinning is going to be pretty even. And one other thing we're going to notice is that the Unreal skeleton, because the mesh is leaning back, it has a bit of an arch, so we're going to move these around. I'm going to realign these with some tools in a minute. I'm going to deactivate the something one of my students showed me, which I'm very happy to use, is to not select the mesh by deactivating that little button there. Thank you. I can't remember which student it was, actually, now that I think about it. But thank you. Okay, so now we've got these spines a little bit curved, and that kind of goes with the belly. So that's not too bad. That might actually work in our favor. Now I'm going to head on over to where I need the neck. I could go into a whole thing explaining where the neck placement should be, especially for a character like this one. It shouldn't be a big deal, right? Because he has no neck, really. But the most important thing you need to understand about necks is if you do a yes movement, you're going to be using the entire neck. All you have to do is put your fingers around the base, where if you had like a some sort of necklace on you, put your fingers where your necklace would be, and just turn your head side to side like doing a no motion. And you're going to feel, especially when you go to the extremes, that there's a lot of stuff going on under there, and it's going all the way to the top of the base of the skull. So there's a lot going on for a no. When it comes to a yes, by doing the yes motion, the up and down, if you hold even your fingers in the middle of your neck, like if you were like pretending to choke yourself type of thing, and you're just doing a yes or no, you're going to notice there's not a lot going on in your neck. It's all happening at the base of your skull, where the spine actually enters the skull. So that is something that's going to be important for us to define. So even though we don't have much of a neck going on here, that kind of movement is going to be something we need to make sure that we're covering. So in the case of the neck, this is the skull, right? He's very prognostic, and you might think that's part of the head, but it isn't. This is really just the orange part is. So if you put this underneath the ear here, that's a good point where we could use for being able to say yes and to look up. And think of it this way too: when you look down, are you able to make your chin touch your torso? And the answer is yes, of course you can, right? If you were bending from if a yes was with the neck bone, you would not be able to do that for a very long. You probably have to be down here somewhere, and it would. I mean, like if you could do, if you were to rotate this, all you could do is move this downward. You'll never really hit your chest. So keep that in mind. So a yes allows for the chin to touch the torso, which means your yes is definitely coming from the upper part where the neck makes contact with the skull. So even though he has no neck, like I mentioned already, this is important because it will allow us to do head movements that otherwise we wouldn't be able to, despite not having possibly any skinning done for that. All right, so now let's move on. Let's finish naming these. So this is going to be neck, and this is going to be head. Okay, that's good. Now let's grab this guy and make a duplicate over here. And now we need to figure out where we're going to put the clavicle. So the clavicle is always under the neck, right? And it's going to be about... There's lots of ways you could do this, but let's see how Unreal does it. Unreal likes to do this thing where, they always aim a little bit above it. You got to consider this character has big shoulders, so I think we should focus on getting the arm first, and then we'll figure out where the clavicle goes. So it's just called clavicle, and this is going to be called upper arm. Now for the upper arm, it's easy on a G.I. Joe figure like this, but for our friend Lanky here, might be a little bit different. So I'm just going to leave this here, and I'm going to duplicate it, and I'm roughly going to be just past the suspenders here. And the idea here is that if you increase the radius of this bone until the top part touches this, it'll simulate the mass that is. Think of it like a GI Joe figure, like the little piece that goes in, or a Barbie doll. You have these sockets kind of thing. So think of it that way. This is where it's going to be pivoting, and this is the mass that is representing. And for the most part here, the top part where it touches the top, the shoulder, that's going to be important. We're going to probably want to move that a little bit further back here, so that's more centered, and that's roughly where your clavicle is going to be. Now what we're going to do is we're going to rotate this, and again we're just going to eyeball this. We had a Z pointing out like it was like on a shoulder. Like a shoulder pad, it's pointing outward like a spike on a shoulder pad, right? And the Y is pointing to the back, and it's got the X-axis pointing to where the child will be. We will fix these alignments in just a moment. And I'm just going to duplicate this now, and we're going to start working on our elbow. Okay, so for the elbow, we can make this much smaller. Something like that, right? Same alignment, because... Also, another way of looking at this, the elbow is an important one because, like I may have mentioned, you always think about where your Z is for the main rotation. The first thing that you animate will be the Z-axis, and the X-axis will be how you spin along that bone. So the Z-axis here would be doing this kind of thing, which is what an elbow should do. And we're minimizing, I won't go into the details of why we're minimizing the Y-axis. But let's just make sure that the Z is our primary focus. And in this case, we probably need to be further back here. I might activate the wireframe just to see what's going on here. And that elbow is a little low for my taste, but we're going to still use it as a point of reference. So roughly there. And I'm going to make it so that this mass represents what the elbow inside would be. And I'm touching, the edge of it is touching the outside. So from the point of view of pivot, it's not in the middle. It's not in the back. It's somewhere in between, right? and then we're using the radius of the joint to help us determine where the mass is for the elbow. And also, one of the things I must mention is that in Maya, especially the default Maya IK, will require some sort of a bend in the initial positioning so that it knows where to bend. It can't. One of the worst things you can do is set up joints in Maya so that they're straight, and then expect IK to work. It won't even bend at all. It'll be just a straight line between the two bones. You break IK basically by doing that. So when you're setting your IK, make sure that when you create your IK handle, that initial position has some sort of bend in it, so that it knows how to bend, so that it works for the IK. All right, so for the hand, actually, this is actually a pretty good radius, because it's going to represent, again, we're thinking of it maybe a little bit smaller, so that it shows. Think of it like a toy socket. This little thing would, when they were building those things, it was they're actually pretty good about it. They had this in mind, right? So this is the point of pivot, and I think that would make a nice. A very nice wrist. If we were bending there, it would prioritize making the hand pretty solid here, and then the rest would be deforming on the inside. One thing we need to fix right away is the direction of because this is not what a hand does. It's like this that we would rotate, right? Flapping the hand. So we need to fix the Z-axis so that it fixes that. And in the case of Unreal, what they do is they make it go towards the back. So all you need to do is press J, rotate it 90 degrees. Now we have something pointing towards the back, so that's good. We need to rename these. This is going to be wrist. No, wait, this is actually hand, and underscore L. And this elbow is actually the lower arm. Lower arm, and I believe this is upper arm. Underscore L. And I'm just following the naming convention of Unreal. You don't have to, but I just like using something consistent. And if I want to bring this into Unreal at some point, I want to make sure that that's okay. So in the case of what we're doing here, I think this could be a little bit lower and it would be just fine. I'm going to see that this line here, the best way I can describe a clavicle is, think of it like a coat hanger that's been cut in half and you're just kind of folding it like a butterfly. It's kind of complicated to explain the whole clavicle, but I try to always visualize it as a like as if you're looking at the top, it would be the coat hanger, and then you cut it in half, and then it opens, it flies open. What's important is, in the case of Unreal, they always like to put it towards the front. I generally like to keep it more towards the point of the center of the whole clavicle. This should do just fine. The only thing is I need to make sure it's rotated correctly. Let's see, it's pointing to the child, so I'm going to make it so that it roughly points to the child, like so. It's pointing to the child, and then this thing is pointing to that child, and that one's pointing to that one. So that's good. Now for the fingers, before we get too involved with the fingers here, I just want to take a quick gander at what it does, what Unreal does. What you're going to notice is that most of the fingers, if I press F, that'll help, and I'll get rid of the wireframe overlay. It'll make it a little easier. Z is pointing to the back, and Y is downward, and X is towards what would be the child node. What you're going to notice is that's identical to the hand, because a Z-axis, this is what it's prioritizing. And when it comes to fingers, it's also the same priority, because if you look at a finger, this is the motion that's most important for a finger, nothing else. Yes, you have some of the other motion. In the case of a finger, if you ever spin a finger, there's something wrong with you, or the rig was not well aligned to begin with, one of the two. In the case of the thumb, it's the same thing, except it's been rotated off to the side. So normally it would be like this, like the other ones, but here it's been rotated so that the Z again is doing the primary motion, which is this one, because the thumb is basically pointing on a different axis. So we're going to hide this now. We've done enough looking at that so that we can set these up. So now the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to make a duplicate over here. I'm going to press F to focus in. And I think I'm going to reactivate the wireframe for this one so we can see what's going on. Now this mesh isn't super great. So if you look generally at your knuckles, you're going to find that, and you just rotate your fingers at the knuckles, you're going to notice that unlike everything else where, like, let's say the knuckle here for this middle phalange would be more along where these cuts are, like these two cuts represent kind of like where it would go. And I'm going to make this a lot smaller because we don't need it that big. But for the knuckle, what you're going to find is that it's closer to the it's inside the palm of the hand. That finger seems to not be on the nowhere near the edge here. It's going to be on the inside, and these fingers seem to be well cut on this mesh, but on this part of the mesh, it's not very well cut for knuckles, and that's okay. I mean, this is Lanky, not Knuckles. I know it's a terrible joke. I'm sorry. Okay, so now moving on. Let's start thinking about these bones here, so that we can start creating just the basics for the fingers. We might have to, give a quick gander at the one from Unreal. These are called ring. Then this is 0, 1. And this is pinky, 0, 1, middle, index, thumb. Nothing too complicated. It's pretty straightforward. So we said this was ring. So I'm going to call it ring underscore 0, 1 underscore L. That's my ring finger. And I'm just going to do this kind of thing. We're going to move this along so we don't spend too much time doing this. I'm just going to try to favor going to the top part. Maybe make these a little bit smaller so we can clearly see where they are. Something like that. Something always a little bit of a bias towards the where the knuckle touches the surface and not so much underneath. That's okay. And then we're going to bring this guy over here. Okay, that's good. And normally this is where you would stop, but because we're in Maya, we're going to have to create what I refer to as either a nub. Like I've seen that term before. Basically, it's something you put on the tip of the finger. It's not an actual thing that you're going to use for skinning, but it's used to align the previous bone so that it points to it. And that seems to be a joint thing. Like I won't go into too much detail for that, but basically just doing something like this ought to do it. And we're going to give these guys some names. So we said this is ring 0, 1. I'm just going to grab that. And then I'm going to go over here, paste it, and rename this one to 0, 2. This one's going to be 0, 3. And then this one's going to have a special name so we know it's not really actually part of the finger. So this is going to be called ring nub. N-U-B. I remember there was someone that used to call it la suegra, or just put suegra. Suegra means mother-in-law in Spanish, which means it's the thing that no one wants. It's just this extra thing that is attached to the rest of the finger, and it's kind of mean-spirited, frankly. But anyhow, so name it whatever you want. Just make sure it's clearly labeled so that you know that it's not really part of the fingers. And then later on we can get rid of it for Unreal exporting, but we can keep it now for Maya. So we can save ourselves a little time by grabbing these and just cloning them, and then we'll rename them. So this is like so. We have some tools that will help us with all of this, realigning them so that they're as good as they can be. So this is going to be a little bit higher, a little bit more. The first bone is the important one for the Z-axis rotation. And then this one goes here, roughly like this. You'll see later it's much easier to realign all these things. Okay. We're going to try to move this along as quickly as we can. Okay, so I might go a little faster now. I'm going to be a little bit rougher with my placement. I'm just trying to, hopefully in the what you're doing while I'm doing this is maybe pausing the video, making sure your placement's a little better than what I have. There's a lot of eyeballing here on my end. So okay, I always bias towards the top. Now we can call this one middle. So this is going to be called middle underscore 01 underscore L. Oh, we have a typo. Okay, I'm just going to copy that. And eventually I'll be able to click on that. 02. This one's going to be 03. And this one's going to be 04. No, oh, almost did that. This one's going to be nub. Middle nub. Okay. So next we're going to grab these guys. Boop. And I'm going to move this downward like so. Roughly around there. Try to have it so that it follows that curvature, so that it's roundish. As you can see, the bottom part here, this is where that padding is on our hand. That's the part that will kind of like flap for these knuckles, because they're inside, right? Like I was mentioning. So something like that. This guy goes over here. A little off over here. We're going to fix all of this in a moment. I'll show you. I don't need to deal with that. As long as it's roughly in the right direction. This one's the one I only give it a little bit of love. Okay, it's gonna aim this way. We'll fix that in a little bit. Okay, so that's good enough. We're gonna give this a name, and that's gonna be Pinky underscore 01 underscore L. I'm gonna copy that. And I'm gonna go over here, paste it over here, paste it again. And this one's gonna be the nub. There we go, nice and easy. We're getting there. This is the long, boring part. Whoop. But once you have all this stuff in place, because of the method that we're going to be using for skinning is, frankly, much easier than it used to be, and Maya's been really pushing forward for to simplify skinning, but without skinning, because for the most part, skinning used to be done by painting, and now they seem to have realized that no one really likes doing that, and it's not very precise, and not everybody can do that well with like if they don't have a Wacom pen. So I think they're starting to. Also, they just want to make it so it's a one button thing, so you can just get on with your life instead of just skinning. I know a lot of people who have described to me the zen feeling of skinning, and that they don't mind being skinners. In fact, they like being skinners. So I don't know. At the end of the day, there's a lot to be gained to being good at skinning, and I think there's still plenty of jobs available for that. And AI hasn't. I wish they'd use AI for those kind of things. You know, the jobs we don't like, texture UVing and stuff like that. Things that most people don't like doing. But you know, anyhow, here we are. Oh, my cat's waking up. All right, so here we're going to go into rotation. I'm going to press J, and I'm just going to rotate it 90 degrees this way. Okay. He seems to be in a bad mood today. My little furry friend here. That's usually he's usually just sleeping off on the side here. Today he seems to be a bit of a troublemaker. He's actually ruined quite a few videos, and that's okay. The price we pay for our furry little buddies. So wait, no, this is, if you look carefully at your hand, you'll notice that where your hand is, like the edge of the hand, like the palm, we have a joint that's just outside of that. So I'm going to put that there. This one's the one that goes over here where it's been indicated. It's not very well cut, but it's okay. We'll do what we can. And we'll put the new skinning tools that Maya has to the test. See what it can do with it. So basically something like this, and this should be a little bit more inward. It's a carpal, but it controls like this whole area, so it should be further in the back. However, this should be more than enough, and I don't think we named our index. Yeah, we didn't do the index, so this should be index underscore 01 underscore L. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to select this, and that should be a 03, a 02 rather. This is going to be 03. And this is going to be, oh, there we go. This is the nub. That is nub, index nub. Just double checking, index 03, index 02, index 01. Over here, we're going to have the same thing. It's going to be thumb. So let me write that down, thumb underscore 01 underscore L. Let me just double check to make sure that our friend, the mannequin, has a similar setup. And sure enough, it does, but this is not, because they have, their one was over here, their two is far out here, and then they have this, but we'll do what we can to follow the Unreal way as much as possible, but at the same time, follow anatomy as much as we can too. So, okay, so we said this is thumb 01, copying that. This is thumb 02. The more you deviate from the Unreal way of setting it up, the harder it later becomes to align everything in Unreal. For here, it's not going to cause us much trouble for this part. This is nub. Although I've seen some mocap that seems to match what Unreal does. Okay, so now what we should be doing as well as we're doing this, because I still have to do the leg, and then maybe add a couple of extra things for like the head, so we have like the equivalent of a nub, but for the other extremities. Okay, for the feet, but before we do that, I'm going to just go File, Save As, Save Scene As, Lanky Kong. We're going to call this skin whip underscore 01. And we're just going to be doing that. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to grab this and I'm going to put it around, not too, because according to Unreal, it was pretty close. So it's about there. And the way the axis works here is that basically, in this case, they make it either the x-axis points towards or away from the child, and in this case, it's going to point away because the difference between this bone and this bone is less if you do it this way. And we like things that are close to the parent because of gimbal issues. In this case, just double checking. You see, this is called thigh, and this is called calf. And then we have foot, and then we have ball. So that's cool. But then we're going to double check here, actually. And we're going to come back later for the placement of these, because their pivots are a little different for in-game concerns, which we will try to mimic as best as possible, just to be compatible. So let's say we grab this, and then I'm just going to move it up. I'm just going to put it there, put this one there, and we needed, let's see here. So that one is going to point towards the child. If I go to the front, it's going to go like that. And we're going to fix all of these up in just a moment. And I've been saying that, but essentially, this is actually, okay, so that's pretty close. So that's okay. And then the ball of the foot is the weird one because it has a y-axis up and an x points outward. And that's kind of like contrary to all this. So no big deal. Easily done. So if I grab this and I duplicate it and put it for the ball of the foot. Ooh, a little off here. We said we want the Y up. Yeah, Y up and X out. Okay, okay. So just a quick and simple rotation like so. And we're good to go. Maybe we can clean this up so that it's more accurate. So this is minus 90. Okay, that's fine. This is also minus 90, and this is 90. So it's more flat, more Cartesian. We can lower the radius so that we can see it clearly where it's going to be in the middle here. So if the ball of the foot, actually it would be bigger, it would be touching, that's where it touches the floor. That's the center of it roughly. And this would be it. So we could do the fingers, and I did do that in previous iterations of this video. And if you're going to be animating the toes and the extra thumb here, you know, it's fine if you're going to animate it, but if you're not going to animate it, I would suggest against it. So let's keep it simple. Let's see here. In this case, we're still doing everything the hard way, so I guess you know, it pays off. So this is roughly where the middle is for this, and this is like if this was an action figure, this would make sense. And I'm going to move it just a tiny bit to the back because the anatomy is like that. If we're going to deal with the knee, this is roughly correct, and I'm going to put it along the line of this this pant line. And this one is, if I look at it from this perspective, it should be maybe a little bit lower, and we can pull it back a bit so we get that nice shape for the IK to understand what we're going to be doing, because he's already a little bit like I'm going to try to straighten this out a little bit so that we can help the IK solve for the bend later. Okay, so that's pretty good. We need to name things. So we said this is a thigh. Thigh underscore L. And this is the calf underscore L. It's very consistent. This is foot underscore L. And we said this is called ball underscore L. Okay, so we have, maybe this is a little bit further forward, just a tiny bit, not much. Okay, something like that, roughly. And we got our elbows in the right place. And now I think it's time to start putting all of this together. And we can do this, there's two ways you can do this. You can either just select things in the right order and press P type of thing. And then we're going to use some tools to fix things. Or we can also use this here as a way of, the outliner you can create a hierarchy by middle click dragging. So for example, if I do this, index nub should go to index 3 as a, there we go. So I click on this. This goes to index 2. Click index 1. So it should have done the fingers here, right? That seems to be okay. Mistakes can happen when you do it this way. So I'm going to show you the other method, which is I select the child, select the parent, press P. Select the child, select the parent, press P. And this is safer because you're visually doing it. Because things can happen while you're in here. It doesn't always work out. P, just pressing P. And if you ever want to unparent stuff, you press Shift P. And I like doing this method because it really is liberating as to where you're placing stuff. You're not thinking about the hierarchy at all when you're doing that. This guy's going to become much, much smaller so that it doesn't bother us. Actually, what we could do is this. Here's another thing. If you multi-select objects and you say, all of these are going to be child of this, the last thing you selected will be a different color. And it's going to indicate, when you press P, it'll just parent all of them that way. Then it's like, I would have preferred an ordered hierarchy than selecting all the children. That's just me. But just know how Maya works, and that's it. So I'm just going to bring that down like so. And then that is child of this thing. This thing's part of the torso. The neck is also child of the torso. The head is child of the neck. And then these guys are going to be easy enough to do. This is child of this object here. Right? We got this guy is child of this. This is child of that. And this is child of that. Now what I am going to do is create a foot nub. Just shift duplicate and then parent it like that. That's the easiest way of creating nubs. And then this object, I'm just going to call it foot underscore nub underscore L. All right, so far so good. And then this is, so here we have a root node, and this is the what we've just created. Yeah, this guy should be called pelvis. I don't know how I messed that one. And it should be child of this node. So in this case, maybe I'll do that with the middle click drag. All right, so root, pelvis, spine, neck, upper arm, right, lower arm, hand, and then we have all of the thumbs, the index fingers, the middle fingers. Oops, almost that was a little Wacom mishap. Ring, pinky, neck to head, and then you have everything for the feet. So far so good. I think all we're only missing is the nub for the head, right? So I'm just going to do this kind of thing. We're going to call this, I usually call this one crown. So crown, but must add the nub part to make sure we can find it later, because it'll be easy to just filter them all the nubs and delete them when we need them deleted. Okay, so now the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of the wireframe view. I'm going to select the root, right click and go select hierarchy, so that's good. I'm going to change everything so it's a radius of 3. Okay, hang on, that happens every once in a while. Select hierarchy. Let's try 2.5. There we go. Now we can bring it to 3. Okay, sometimes that happens. It's a little UI issue. Not a big deal. We have everything nicely placed, and everything's easy to see. And now we're going to do a final steps of aligning these, and then we're going to do the left side. This bone is kind of annoying when you have that line, so you can just go to the attribute editor and turn the draw style into joint. It won't show you the line going up, but we know that this is the root node, so no big deal. Okay, so now at this point we're going to go save. I'm just going to save over my last one because yeah, it's pretty much what we were doing. There hasn't been that much. It's just more has been added, not modified. So okay, so let's see if we can fix a few things for alignment, and I'll show you some of the tools that we have. If you do not have this menu, know that basically what I'm doing here is, if it's not something directly in Maya already, it's going to be something that fills the gaps by little scripts, okay, in most cases, because I'm trying to avoid any plugins, but we can still use scripts to fix a few things. For example, one of the things that I like using this for is if the tool that we have in Maya, at least in 2024, you can go into the rigging under skeleton and go to orient joint. This is usually the tool that you need to use in order to orient your joints. And you can maybe do that before you place them and then rotate them into place. Anyways, it can get really unpleasant to use because there's 2 problems with this tool. First one is it will affect the entire hierarchy, and there's no way to change that. The other thing is that, so if you select one bone and you want to fix these two, you'd have to unparent the hand from it and then fix it and then reparent the hand. Not the end of the world. It's not. I've done stuff like that before. It's okay for safety reasons. Then the other thing is, this tool only works to align things relative to the world axis, which is this thing down here, right? The world axis is either up to the sides or back and forth. And there are some times where you don't have that kind of setup, and it can make things really awkward for placement, and then you have to make some awful concessions to make everything fit the world up, down, left, right. Some people actually flatten out the hierarchy, do the joint orient options, and so on. It's kind of terrible. Okay, so we'll do them in the proper order. So we're going to look at the spine. Now the spine, the X is just pointing upwards, but it's not actually pointing to the child node, right? So the best thing to use to align this and fix this is to just grab the child node, like this one. And then in the tool over here, you have realign x-axis, parent x-axis. So it's going to make the x-axis of the parent point to the child that we've selected. And I do this because a parent can have multiple children, but a child can only have one parent, at least in the logic of 3D. So if we select the child, we're guaranteed to have only one parent, which means we can make that parent point to the child easily this way. If you did it the other way around, it would be like a lottery to pick which one is the child node that you need to point at. Okay, so let's go this way. So we're going to do this, and all it's going to do is it's going to take what's currently, it's going to take its current alignment, and then do its best to get the x-axis. Well, do its best. It'll do it perfectly. Like so, here's how you can tell that it did it right. If you select, let's say, this child node whose parent hasn't been fixed, and you look at your translate values, now this isn't too bad. But if you followed along in the other videos, you know that your coordinate is always relative to your parent node. So that means if two objects, if the child node and the parent node are exactly in the same place, your values would be 0 across everything. It would be 0 translation, 0 rotation, and a scale of 1. If it was exactly in the same place in rotation and scale. So that means that another way of looking at this is your coordinate is kind of like the difference. The child has traveled away from the parent relative to the parent's coordinate system. So in this case, you have an x, a y value, and a y value, which means the parent is not aiming directly at the child, because if it was, the x value would be something, and then there'd be zeros on the y and the z, meaning it's only traveled away from the x-axis of the parent. So you'll know that you fixed it because if you right-click here and go realign x-axis, it will make it so now the parent is pointing at the correct, is correctly pointing because the position is set to 8. Also, you're going to notice this tool is also freezing the rotation, so it's cleaning that up. So you'll notice you have these nice zeros. So it's kind of doing a couple things in one. If you don't know what that is, you go into skeleton, and you can use the joint orient tool. And you can orient the node, and it will also zero out, or you can use the freeze tool. Make sure you're using the rotate. You're freezing the rotate, meaning you're zeroing out the rotate, and it's going to put the values into the joint orient. If you're not too familiar with that, please take a look at the previous videos, especially in the ones related to the basics. This is important stuff. So in this case now, I'm going to be able to get the parent to aim correctly here. So I'm going to do align x-axis, and you're going to notice that it's pointing. Now this guy is, nope, that didn't point to the child. Hang on a second. This is the child node, and this is actually the parent node. So we actually just fixed this guy, right? So we're going to use this as our point of reference for the torso. Realign parent x-axis. Boom, there we go. So now this is properly aligned. The parent is pointing to the child. This guy needs to fix its parent as well. That's the one I was not looking into correctly. So everything's pointing correctly to where it should. And this is now correctly pointing to this one. And now we want this one, this child node to affect the neck, and we want this one too. So if I just select these two, realign parent x-axis, you're going to see that it's going to do both. This one is now correctly pointing to this, and this one's correctly set up as well. So all good. We don't care about the nub. The nub is just there to help us set these things up. Now for this part, we're not going to do this because then the child, this would start pointing here, and that would mess up her spine. So do not realign the parent of the clavicle. However, we need to fix the clavicle so that it points directly at this. So you're going to start seeing there's a pattern. So all we need to do at this point is maybe these two, realign, so that's nice and clean. And we're going to do that for all the fingers as well, so they're properly aligned. And definitely the hand, we want this to point directly at the hand. So I'm going to be able to do this. And now the hand's been fixed up, and this is pointing directly at it. We're going to talk about what I call the solution plane when it comes to IK in just a moment, and we're going to fix up these rotations so that they're perfectly aligned for IK, but I suspect this is already pretty good. Okay, so for the rest, we're just going to do this guy we're not selecting because then it would fix the hand. We don't want that. What we do want is basically everything after this point, like so, and we're going to do that multi-select here, because these are all the child nodes that need to be of all the things we need to realign. Yeah, because that one's here. So I'm going to do a realign X. Book. Everything's been realigned correctly. Hopefully, there's no issues. No, that looks pretty solid. That looks pretty good. Now, there is one thing that I'm going to talk about that's been added to the tools, and that's for aligning rotation values of the z-axis. So, for example, if I were to look at this pinky here, where we duplicated things and it was individual objects, you're going to notice that it's not really all that bad. Like if I were to select the entire hierarchy here, whoop, that's not the hierarchy. Select the hierarchy. Thank you. Oh boy. Okay. So if I go over here, select hierarchy. There we go. Okay. So if I were to rotate on the Z, will it curl the fingers in correctly? That's not bad. It's really not bad. It came out okay. It would be fine if I were to use this. Let's try it with this guy. Select hierarchy. If it's just the Z-axis rotation, it's pretty straight, actually. That looks pretty good to me. So there's nothing to really adjust in this scenario. There's another tool that I have here that will help us fix these. So that's pretty good. We did a good job of setting these up initially. And since all the x-axis rotations have been fixed, this one's not so good. Not too good here. So maybe what we can do is this. I can select this node, and I'm going to bring over this tool setting. You can do that by double-clicking whatever transform you're in, and set to preserve children, and you can just rotate this a little bit like so. So it flattens out more. And now if I want all of these to have this same rotation, you could have modified all of them at the same time, but we want to be a little bit more precise. So we're going to just use, well, we don't need to care about that. We can do align and realign z-axis. Whatever the first one is will be sent to the other ones, and it'll make the z-axis point in the same direction. So they're all properly aligned. And let's find out what happens when I select hierarchy and then rotate on the Z. This guy is actually going to be useful to us because it's sending the information. There's still a bit of a wonkiness to it, so maybe it's because of we need to realign the x-axis. There you go. And reselect. This finger is off to the side. It's kind of okay. So now it's pretty clean. We realign the Z and then we realign the X's, and everything is good. For this guy, I believe we realigned the X's. No, we did not. Look, the X is not pointing correctly. So this guy, well, or did we? Let's find out. Let's just grab. This is clearly not pointing to the child, so I'm going to grab. This guy has been fixed. This has not been fixed. So if I realign that, There we go. That's proper. This guy is definitely not pointing at the right direction, so boom, there, fixed. Except now that z-axis changed on here, so because I have the preserve children option, I can press J, and that's 90 degrees. We'll freeze everything in a moment, but basically if we were to, well, we can freeze it right away. So freezing, you can either use this tool and say rotate, freeze, and it'll clean up the rotations. And then this guy, is he okay? Yeah, he's got to translate X as a child. That's fine. And this is clean, and we don't really care too much about this guy. So we're going to select this and go select hierarchy. And I'm going to turn off the, I can close this and turn this off. And now if I rotate on the, hang on a second. Yeah, so this is y-axis aligned now. So, okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to, at one point I must have done something that messed that up. So here's a fun thing that we can do. I'm going to rotate this that way. And now I'm going to use that other tool to realign the z-axis and go right click, realign z. So everybody points in the same direction as that z. And then I'm going to realign all of the x's like we did. And so now we should be in business. Okay, so if I select this and select hierarchy, now I should have the thumb rotation. Like the values aren't necessarily, what's important is the motion. So now if I select this guy, preserve children. So if I do this, this is going to be just fine for the thumb rotating inward like that. So we fixed everything. Everything's good for this. For the elbows, there's this thing called a solution plane. So imagine this point at the shoulder, the elbow, and at the wrist, and same thing for the leg, creates a triangle. So that triangle is what we need to align our pole vector and make sure our k is having no problems with it, because the ik is dependent on this thing called the solution plane. Think of that triangle as if it was a big infinite square. And we just need to find the place where it's aligned. And in this case, it's going to be okay. But if you're having any trouble, so here I'm going to show you how you do this. I'm going to create an object, like a locator. Make sure it's got a big enough scale so I can see it. And I'm just going to move it up. Okay, so what I want to do is I want it to solve. I'm going to close this for now. I'm going to solve for what the elbow should be and what the shoulder should be using a tool that I have here. And you do that by selecting the object that you want to adjust, and then you select the last in the order of the hierarchy, the last one that is part of the three. So basically, because you're giving me the hand, I have that point, but I can also find its parent, which gives me the second point. And then it gives me the one at the top as well. And now I have, with these just two selections, I can find everything and I can do the math for it. So if I go to align, I'm going to go for the 3-point rotation alignment middle book. And it's going to place it exactly where the elbow would be. And in our case, see, it's not quite right. You have this z-axis pointing this way, and the one we have is pointing upwards like that. So it's not very good. So we're going to use a little trick of mine now. What we can do is we can select this object and then select this object. Normally the match tool does not take into consideration the preserve children option, and it will fix it and then screw up everything down here. So what you'd have to do is unparent this, do the fix, reparent them type of deal. But now I've added something to this match tool, where I've taken the functionality of the match tool from Maya and I've added the ability to see if this option is on. So preserve children will be on. And if I do a match translation and rotation, well, actually just need the rotation, it will fix the rotation, it will match it, and not touch the children and maintain it. See, so now we can have a perfectly aligned elbow, which means if we bring in a pole vector later at exactly this point, it will move along the y-axis to pull out, and you will not have a pop in your IK. And now I'm going to fix the shoulder as well. So if you just select this and then select the hand and then go align for the top one, it's going to show you where it should be. See, it's a little bit off, so it's no big deal. So I'm going to grab this guy with the preserve children on. I'm going to be able to match it now without affecting the child positions. You'll see that everything is still in the right place and where we left it. So nice and clean. Everything's been cleaned up. So that's nice. We're going to do the same thing for the bottom. And we can do that by simply selecting this, selecting, in this case, the foot. Actually, the rotation of this foot is a little... Oh, we haven't fixed the x-axis rotations here. So let's do that. So if I select this, it's going to fix the parent. Select this, it's going to fix that parent. Fix. Now, if I select this one, actually, we don't want to touch this because we don't want to affect the pelvis. So I'm going to do this, align parent, and now all the x-axis should be pointing to the children. So this x is pointing to that child, this x is pointing to this child, and so on. Yes, but this guy had a special setting that we may have just inadvertently broken, right? It was x up. So let me see here. Yeah, x up. Okay, so we'll just fix that real quick. Not a big deal. So what we can do is just grab this, go to rotate, press J, holding J, and just get it to point upwards with the preserve children option on. Oh, a little off. Or was I? Maybe the snaps aren't. It's close. Actually, that's pretty good. That is pretty good. Okay, so we'll leave it like that. And for its value, we're going to freeze it. Rotate. And you're going to notice that it's been frozen. And remember that the freeze is only doing a joint orient freeze, so it can't freeze the translations. But as long as we only have, in this case, it makes sense that there would be more than one x-axis value, the translation x value. Because this is not like a normal joint that points to the parent and the other way. But anyways, point is, these are nicely set up now, and we can fix them up so that we can grab this guy and do the exact same thing we did before, align. So show me the 3-point alignment for the middle. So it's telling me this is where it should be pointing. If I go into W, actually, this is, it's very, very close. But, just to be clean, I'm going to select this and match it. That was pretty close. And then I'm going to do that again for the top part. And I'm going to align for the top. Boop. Now this object is going to tell me what the difference is. And this one was also very, very close. That's crazy. So this is going to match this object. Match rotation. So now it's precise. We've got ourselves some clean, a very clean setup right now. So now what we're going to do is, with this in mind, we're going to freeze everything. So that's as clean as it can be. Select this and go select hierarchy. And you can use the skeleton. Wait, where's the freeze button? Yeah, the freeze button is, you can find it in other menus, but I'm just going to use this one here. I'm just going to get to the freeze transformation. It's probably under modify transforms. Here we go. It was under here. So we can go to just rotate for all of them. Go and apply. Now everything should have its rotations to 0, which means it's, clearly these are not 0 rotations, so they're going somewhere. And that somewhere is called the joint orient, where it's storing that information, but allowing you to start at 0. It's a whole thing. We'll not go into too much detail here. I'm going to close these things. Now, one last thing we're going to do is we're going to turn off all of these local rotation axis displays. And we can do that. Select hierarchy. Now, normally the only option you have is just to toggle things on and off. And good luck if you have a few that weren't toggled on and then you have to go find them. I've added a new little thing. This is, again, one of those things I added where you can just turn them all off now. You can actually pick one instead of just toggling. Toggling can be an awful workflow. Okay, so now we have this clean setup. We're going to go File, Save. And all we'd need to do to be able to make a mirror of this, normally you can just use skeleton and go mirror joints, like so, and tell it it's on the XY, because XY, think of it like a big old mirror, like a plane. If you want a mirror on the X-axis, you would put a mirror on the Z and the Y. And then we're going to mirror the behavior so that we have something identical on the other side, that when we rotate the two equivalent objects will rotate like we would imagine. I'll get into that in a second. We'll test that in a moment. And it has this very weak search for this kind of string and then replace it with that. But we're not going to use this because it's a little bit difficult to deal with the _L_R. So what I'm going to do, because sometimes you'll get Rift or some sort of naming issue. In this case, it shouldn't be a big deal. We still don't have the controllers, which will have lifts that becomes Rift naming, and we don't have any visuals that we need to duplicate. So, okay, I'm going to try to use the Maya tools out of the box as much as possible. So you just need to select like the one that starts the branch and say apply, and it will create a duplicate of that and rename it based on what we said here. So this now becomes underarm right. And if we select these two like so, and this is what I was talking about before. Oh, wait, let me get rid of the preserve children option. We don't need that. So if you do this, see, this is the behavior of a mirror. So it's been, these bones have been aligned to match that. And if we do the same thing over here, where we take this bone and we do a mirror, everything should have been renamed correctly. We can just double check it over here. We have thigh right, calf right, foot right, ball right, foot nub right. So we're doing pretty good on joints. And now we're going to be doing some skinning and setting things up for the skin. What I'm going to do is also, I'm going to select this object, go right click, select hierarchy, and I'm just going to change the color of it. Wireframe color, I'm going to turn it to yellow. And now we have the yellow objects, because later on we might have some different colors for different nodes to help us out. So right at this point, I'm going to save again. This time, save scene as whip02. It's been enough of a change to warrant that. And we're going to be testing a few things in just a moment. So one of the things we can test is, let's see, would the IK be okay? So if I select the hand, I could create IK the normal way. This is just for a quick test, and I might be reloading. So I'm just going to go constraint. RMIK, this is a shortcut tool, but we're just doing a quick test. If you didn't want to use this, you could just use IK for Maya the old-fashioned way, which we'll do maybe later. And if you set it, it looks as though it did not pop. It's actually quite, oh, well, we have to grab the up vector, and whoop, it does not move at all. So life is good. That's pretty clean. So seeing that, maybe I can undo it. Yeah, it's good enough. Got to be careful with undo. Sometimes it doesn't undo correctly and leaves things in a weird state. So I'm more of a fan of just deleting stuff and starting over if needed. Okay, so we're going to talk about something that it's kind of when you're dealing with skinning, the method that I'm going to be using is the geodesic method with a skin weight of 1 or an influence of 1. Which means when it does the bind skin, it's going to be saying, okay, this one vertice will follow this one bone, and it's going to do that for every vertice. And we can help it solve that by creating these things called fins. I call them fins, or basically they're another version of nubs. Basically, what we're doing here is we're just creating these extra nodes. that help it find the dimensions of the bone. So I'm gonna just put in a few of them. Okay, so you can go crazy and add as many as you want. It should save you some skinning time. And in this case, I'm gonna deal with that. I just want to make sure that some of the skinning issues that usually come along with this kind of a setup with the geodesic method is going to be avoided, so we can save a little bit of time. I'm going to create some new joints. What did it? Oh, I'm going to click it and then boop, and then that's going to have a different color, right? Because it's the default. And hopefully, when I parent stuff, and I'm going to call this guy a fin. I call them fins because it adds like these little edges to the joints. So just so you know, when you're doing the geodesic, the nubs are not going to actually receive any skinning. They're not they're not going to affect any vertices. The geodesic method basically ignores the last joint nodes, and that's why we added the one for the feet, because we want this bone to affect this area of the foot, and the length from it to its nub is what is going to use as a reference point to be able to skin this. So by just adding a couple of these extra like nodes, we're going to be able to. So if I go grab this guy and I go, okay, go over to the torso actually, and we're going to match just the translation. So if I grab this guy now and I move him over here, armpits are always a bit of a point of contention. So if you go and do this type of thing, you're going to notice that when you do the skin later, it's going to, and all I'm doing is I'm just creating this little node that is going to later be removed. It's just basically saying this bone has this volume, and I'm helping it understand that it goes all the way to this point over here, and that the torso is also going out here, and that it's touching this area. So this torso has a volume, and that's all we're doing here. We're just adding a couple of these extra ones, just so that we can define certain volumes. And I'm going to keep it very light for this exercise. I'm going to grab him, Shift P, so I can remove the X and Z values. So now it's in the middle, right? Y is up, yeah. Okay, so basically there. So now if I bring this up here type of thing, we can tell it, well, this is roughly where we're going to go all the way here. You can add as many of these as you want to be able to help you solve the skinning. But like I said, the time you spent on this, and then you have to get rid of them and all that. So maybe sometimes it's best to keep it light. So I'm just adding a few here and there. So maybe with just that, the legs can be a problem. So I'm just going to duplicate this. And it's kind of a painful place to be fixing. So maybe something like this. Later, fixing this is kind of a pain in the butt. So I'm going to do that. Yeah, that area is roughly what you want to keep in mind. And then maybe for the top part here as well. I'm going to try to minimize. I'm going to try not to do too much of this. I'm really trying, but it's really handy to have this. The more time you spend on it, it's well spent. Time well spent. Okay, so let's just get the mirror version of these guys. Unfortunately, the mirror tool from Maya doesn't do multi-select. So look, you could select them all, and for the sake of the video, I'm just going to do this a little faster. And then just go duplicate mirror hierarchy selection. Book. It's gonna put it over there. Oh, right. It made the. Now I need to parent them, so no problem. This one's gonna be okay. This one's not gonna be okay. I created the duplicates on the other side. This one is going to go over here, and so on. So that was not too painful to do. Okay, we've got a couple of joints here that are helping us out. We've got a couple of fins. We're going to find them later and delete them. There is one fin that is very handy that I'll definitely want to do. I'm going to bring this down here, bring it over here, and do the heel, because the heel, for some reason, always gets ignored. And that's good for that. And then I'm just going to duplicate mirror. There we go. There we go. Okay. No big deal. All good. Everything's fine. I duplicated it on the correct side, and yeah, we're good to go. So let's save this. Call this 3. All right, so we're ready to skin everything. Now, there's a little trick I learned that I find very handy. Do not use the root node as the starting point for your skin. Use the pelvis so that you can ignore because if this it adds any skin weight to anything, it's a pain in the butt to remove later. So, so here's a little trick. The only thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to make sure that we got to turn this back on so I can select the mesh. It's been frozen already, so it's good. And let's just make sure that everything is zeroed out on the other side for the bones that we do care about. Yeah, okay. Some precision errors, but it's fine. It's fine. It's very tiny little decimals. It's not going to cause us any trouble. So I'm going to just select this and then press Q so I get rid of the gizmo so I can select stuff. And then select the pelvis as my root node instead of the root node for the skin. I know that's confusing, but basically instead of using the root all the time, use the pelvis so that the skin starts with the pelvis onward. And we can ignore at least a bone that should not be influencing any vertices. And it's a little something that I suggest you do. We're going to go to skin, and we're going to use the bind skin options. Okay, and right before we click on anything, I'm going to save. Object hierarchy, yes, bind to the object hierarchy. Geodesic, classic linear. Because we can't use quaternion in an engine, and it's not going to help us it actually causes more trouble than it's worth sometimes if we use dual quaternion. And then if you want to do the third one, which is a blend of these two, you have to paint which ones are using classic, which ones are using dual. So let's avoid all that. Let's go to classic linear. Normalized weights, yes, I'm going to put it on interactive. Weighted distribution based on distance, yeah. Maximum influence, this is important. Set it to 1. We're going to use the delta mush method, which will then do the softening between points. We just want it to solve for 1. Maintain maximum influences, remove unused influences. We're going to colorize the skeleton, so we're going to see that the bones are going to change color. And this is the important one, the fall off. If you had the default settings, you probably wouldn't have it. You'd have it around here. Set it to maximum, 1. That is the one that will help with the fins. If you don't have that number set to 1, your fins will be wasted. When you place them, they'll be pretty wasted. In this case, for the resolution, I'm going to stick to, I think with 256 it should be enough. If you go too high, it gets a little grainy on something that's this low res. So 256 is fine. That's one thing I've learned recently. Do not put it at 1024 when you have something that's this low res. If you had something higher res, maybe it's worth it. If you put it too low, you're going to miss things. Like, for example, if when I had the toes assigned, it did a really bad job with the toes and missed a toe because it was just too low a resolution. So I've been messing with it to see if I can improve things. I found that for something like for Lanky here, 256 is just fine. And it's going to be a skin deformer, and we go. Okay, let it do its thing. Okay, so now the skin should be a little bit rough. So if I rotate this, see, but at least we have more or less the area that we wanted. Thanks to the fins, we don't. So normally, if you rotate this, after doing that, this whole area here of the torso would follow the arm, and that's pretty bad. So thanks to that, we got that under control. The head's going to need a little bit of work, right? Because it's normal. We gave it a good definition, but the torso didn't get any fins to tell it where the thing is. But we're going to easily paint that, fix that. Let's see here, the leg. That's really not bad considering this is. Remember, this is a skin influence of 1. Oh, There's a little mistake on my part here. This should be following this bone. So I'm going to skin unbind. Okay, and that was a little boo-boo on my part. So I'm going to select the mesh because I had it parented incorrectly when I did the mirror. And I'm going to now apply it again. So now when I lift this leg, it should not be affecting the other side of the body. That's good. And this, you think this is bad, but it's not actually, because you have to consider each vertice can only pick one joint because we set it to a maximum influence of 1. So this is pretty good. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to add something called a delta mush. Okay, just put it on for now. And now we're going to take a look with the default settings. We're going to look at this leg again. So when I lift it, you're going to notice it doesn't do that anymore. It's doing a much better job of maintaining its shape, and it's pretty soft around that part. And what a delta mush does is it takes that influence of 1 and it softens it basically, and it finds all the in-betweens. But under the hood, we still have a skin. Like if I were to go to the skin here, you're going to see that it's still a 100% skin. And because of the fins that we added, yeah, the fins were definitely worthwhile because it did a really good job of defining the certain areas. When you have an influence of 1, do not paint negatively, meaning do not, like if I press B here to make this brush bigger, shift, when I press shift, it will smooth stuff out, which is useless when you have an influence of 1. And if you press control, at least on a Windows machine, if you press control, you can actually do negative painting. Never do negative painting when you have an influence of 1, because if you remove the 1 influence, Maya does not have an idea of where it should be sending the influence to, because it doesn't have any other influences around. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say, like, for example, these weights here where it seems to be going to this corner. Make this a little bit smaller. That should be going to this bone over here. Yeah, with no fins, it did this. Okay, so no big deal. So I'm gonna select this bone, and I'm simply going to paint here. I have it set to show me a difference or the change. So you'll see that if I could just put it to white so we can see it, but basically this is the normal setting. So if I go like this, all the way around, we will do something special for these buttons once we've done converted everything to a normal skin. At this moment in time, it's kind of useless to try to deal with it. So now if I were to select the pelvis here, it seems to have forgotten what I did here. So let's see here. That's weird. Maybe it's because it removed it. That's unfortunate. Okay, so we'd have to add these bones because it couldn't find any influence because there were no fins. It doesn't even have it in the list here. Let's see, was it fooling me? It was fooling me. When I was right-clicking and select influence, it wasn't actually doing anything. These bones have not been included here. Okay, so we got a couple options. We can go back and get rid of that one option, or what we can do is grab this guy. Grab the mesh, and then go this guy, and this guy should be fine because he has those fins, and that should be fine. These bones have not been included. So if I go into skin, edit influences, add influences with options, make sure everything's been set to the lowest possible setting because we don't want it to interfere with the work from the geodesic work, and add something based on distance. So we're just going to do that. So now if I go back here, and I select this bone. I don't usually edit any of this stuff because if I do, I find it's kind of like a disservice to the person that's watching it because if everything is perfect, you never see how I deal with problems. So this is a perfect example of something didn't work. So if I set this like so and then go and select this guy, now it lost that influence, right? So this is good for you to see because you saw me deal with an issue and solve the problem. So here we go. So I'm going to make sure this is taking care of this part. And I'm just going to do this here. So to affects it. We could do mirroring as well, but in this case, it's like there's not much to it. Then I'm going to go up one, and this time it's working right. Making sure I don't touch as much as I can, because once we go back and forth, like for example, if I go back to this one, you're going to see if I lost it or not, and it'll put it to 100%. So we're going to do this, and we might as well do the top part here. Don't worry, the Delta Mush is going to do a good job about this. It's going to smooth this out as much as possible. All right. And then we could make it so that it touches just those points there. And if I go back now, did it lose it? No, it didn't. It has to be more than 50%. Okay. So if I go up to, that's neck. I want spine 3. Spine 3 is doing a good job over here. It's doing a terrible job over here. Locked influences, not really. So we're kind of fighting with the other one to go here. These buttons, we'll deal with the buttons later. Seems to be some locked. Okay, I see. It's you. That's why. Okay. Still complaining about due to locked influences, but I don't see anything that's locked here. Maybe it's an old message. We'll see in a second. Spine 2. It's still locked. Okay, whatever. We might be fighting what we just painted, so we'll see what happens here. This is fine. This is actually pretty good. Okay, so we have this, and we want to go up to this part up here, and we're just going at 100%, right? So we don't mind this kind of thing. And over here, this is going to be clavicle stuff. So if I look here, I got this. That's good. Maybe that part there. And we're just doing a little bit of work here. For the neck, we're going to, it's funny because neck 1, wait, hang on a second. We called it neck 1. Yeah, we called it neck 1. We'll fix that in a minute. It has to be renamed. Where's the head? Is the head in here? Let me just right click on the head. Head, select influence. Wait, the head didn't come in? That's the head. Okay, so that one didn't come in either. So we're going to just bring that in. And I'm just going to go to skin. In this case, edit influence. I'm just going to click this. Boop. And now that should be in here. So if I select this now, no, not edge. The head is definitely there now. That's weird. It had fins and everything. So I'm just going to do this real quick. Maya really likes painting more than selecting vertices, I've discovered. Doing things with vertices sometimes it's like the workflow is just awful. But sometimes you really do need to select vertices. Like here, there's a couple spots where I'm really surprised. The fins should have brought that in. But okay. Okay, well, anyways, it's good. Let's say these little spots here, these vertices, is not so good. And the other side is maybe something we'll fix in a second here. Just make sure we're actually doing something. Select influence. That's the neck now. That's good. The neck shouldn't have any influence because it's too deep. The shoulder should have influence. Something like that. The arm here should be affecting more. We're going to do a skin, what do you call it? We're going to do a mirror later, no worries. So this is like this. Let's go back to the back here. Maybe just do that. Okay, so let's go take a look at, it does this sometimes. I'm just right clicking and selecting influence, and you just have to make sure you aim it directly at the correct bone, or else it goes into sub mode. So these are all pretty good. Pretty decent job. Okay. Okay. And it's going to, doesn't matter what value I'm setting here, it's going to set it to 1 anyways. So let's see how I did the fingers. Now the fingers are always kind of a complicated thing. So in this case, sometimes you get lucky and it works out. You don't have to worry too much because there's not a lot of vertices here. So even if on one, if it does a zigzag, it's okay because the delta mush is just going to average it out anyways. So we don't need to worry too much about this. Just make sure the tips are well defined. And the zigzagging will not be a big deal because of the delta mush. It's going to do a 50-50. So it's doing the best it can. Oh, here we go again. There we go. Yeah, that's pretty good. You know what? The delta mush is going to do the most of the work here. That's not bad. Yeah. Something like this. Right. Nice and easy. Maybe something like that. You don't need to worry too much about that. We're not going to be doing a lot of hand animations anyways. So let's just double check these. It's not the end of the world. Just gonna fix this up a little bit. Okay, that's not bad. Like I said, if it zigzags, it's fine because it's going to average the things out as long as it's not zigzagging too far. If it's going into another bone, that's not good. Like into another region. Like if it's just a neighbor that it's zigzagging with, it's fine. And you can just clean it up a little if you want to. Okay, so that's pretty good. And now, let's see. Let's take a look at the leg here real quick. That's not bad at all. Something like this. Maybe something like this. That's okay. I can live with this. Maybe we can just do this kind of deal. So it does the blend between here and there. Just help it along. And if I select this guy, it'll go up to here, which means it's going to do the blend between those two. Okay, something like that. Don't worry about this part. We're going to fix it in a second. Really wish I knew what it's complaining about. Like that got locked in when we brought in that head, but anyways. So it's here we go. Okay, it stopped complaining. Good. Now it's complaining again. Maybe it's because we're painting with like it should be just 100%. Okay, so we've done all this. This looks pretty clean. That is amazing that it found the heel and it knew what the shape was. Okay, so that's good. And I think we're pretty much in business here. Let's see, the diaper is pretty good. We'll worry about like the buttons in a moment. Don't worry about it. Once we, so that's good. That's good. That's good. We have a little bit of an influence here because we were painting and we didn't do a selection across. That's okay. And for the head, when we do the, there we go. When we do the mirror, it's going to fix a lot of these things. Okay, so no worries there. There's this here. Wait, no, not that one. We want the clavicle. The clavicle to be able to touch this more. Okay, so that's nice and clean. Just the shoulder will lift and it's going to blend with the shoulder, with the torso here. A little bit more like that. And this area is going to be a little bit twisty, but it's okay if we have a little bit of clavicle action and it blends nicely with this. We'll let the delta mush do its thing. So we're pretty good. We're doing pretty good here, I think. I'm going to just mirror this now. Mirror skin weights. Open it up. It's very similar to the joint. It's going to be the YZ. It's going to be positive, meaning this side. Right, let's just double check here. X-axis is on the side that's positive. Positive to negative, so it's going to do that. And it's going to do a raycast for surface association, but for the most part, influence association is closest joint. So we'll see how good it does it. Now, if we grab this and we take a look at what it did, and we select the head, now it seems to have mirrored the head quite well, except for this part here. That there, fixed. That's pretty clean. This is pretty decent because we have all these nice intersections. The more polygons you have, sometimes the easier this becomes, but the more you have to deal with. So to check to see if things are going well, for the most part, like you can't really trust the Delta Mush all that well because this isn't the exact thing that's going to happen later. So you see here, this kind of thing, if you rotate it, yeah, depending on how it's going to rotate, if you don't use the clavicle, this is how it's roughly going to look like. So it's not too bad without any, like we should be adding twist bones, but this should be fine. This is pretty decent. And then we'll deal with the bones after we've transferred stuff. So I'm just testing. This is just a rough estimate of what it's going to be. Because the Delta Mush, the way it works is it's working on top of the skin that we currently have. But then it's not going to be exactly the same. So we're going to see a real, the real version in just a moment. So we're going to just save this as number 4. And yeah, it's going to be wow, an hour and 40 minutes so far. So now what we're going to do is before we bake the skin, because right now this is a fake skin because it's got a geodesic with an influence of 1 with a Delta Mush on top. That is not something that we can reliably use in an engine or even in Maya, because you're going to have some weird things where, like, for example, if I rotate the fingers, they get kind of mushy and you pass through. When we bake that, it's going to be a lot better than that. So I wasn't really looking at the fingers. It's going to be roughly okay. Okay, so now what we're going to do is I'm going to delete all of the nubs and all of the fins. We don't need those right now. So I can go and do this fin. It's going to show me all of the fins. So here's a fin. Here's another fin. Fin. They did the job. Like I maybe I should have put more work into making more fins. Honestly, they save a lot of time in baking, but I mean in skinning. But you saw how it was relatively fast. I mean we're building this from scratch, and we're doing pretty decently, like considering how long it usually takes to set up a character. So I'm just gonna delete these guys, and oh, I missed one. How did this guy not get? Did it not have a name that was Finn? Oh, that's weird. It's clearly called Finn. It's not showing. Am I losing my mind? Nope. No, I did not have a stroke. It's there, but okay. I'm just gonna get rid of it. Anyways, just doing a quick visual observation. Now what we're gonna do is get rid of all the nubs. Okay. Open this all up. I just want nubs, my dude. Okay. So it's going to be that kind of day. All right, so here we go. Here's the nub. It's because it's at it's the leaf nodes. Oops, we need the neck. We need that neck. Wait, there's 2 necks. We're gonna have to check that and see what's going on. It's possible I did not name the clavicle. That's why. Okay, anyways, just get rid of all the nubs. Right, anything with the word nub in it. Oh, could it be that it's how I'm typing this over here? I have to put a star nub. Maybe that's why. But nonetheless, this should do it, right? Like all the fingertips are selected. These fingertips are selected. The 2 ones at the bottom and the one at the top here. Now I can delete them. Book. So let me just test that. Okay, so we don't need that anymore. And I'm just going to open this up. and we're going to find out what this neck stuff is. Yeah, it's clavicle. So this guy is called clavicle underscore L. And this one, it's one of those things where I forget, these things happen. Don't worry about it. Underscore R. Nice and easy. I'm just going to inspect the hierarchy real quick here. Okay. So we've got the pelvis here. Then we have the spines. We have a clavicle, not a neck. These are nicely named. Everything's clean. The reason why I'm doing this cleanup now is because when we bake the skin, it will reconstruct this. It'll create a new bind. And we don't want to have these nodes that we deleted in the bind afterwards, because it'll leave like a ghost that will make it very difficult to copy and or export and import skin weights. So we want to clean this up now. And this is one of those things that you may not know this, but it's important to keep in mind while you're doing it. It's through practice that you would find out later down the road, oh, because I deleted an object, now exporting my skin, it requires a node to be in that slot that was deleted. So, and it's dependent on the initial skin pose. So that kind of sucks. But, knowing in advance, and you're seeing me do this here, you're realizing that I'm deleting these nodes before I do a bake skin, which creates a new skin. All right, so let's go, and now that this has been done, I'm a bit of a nut when it comes to saving, but sometimes it helps. Okay, so it can save your butt if you save at the right time sometimes. I strongly suggest saving often. So this guy now, I'm going to have to get rid of that fake Delta Mush skinning on top of it. It's doing that nice smoothing, but it's not actually doing the skin. And once we're finished with that, we're gonna fix up those buttons, and I think we're gonna be done with the skin. So let's go and go skin, bake deformation to skin weights, right? Because it's kind of a fake right now. So now I'm gonna go file, reset, because this is a little bit weird the way it works. So I'm just gonna close this here. So the mesh is this thing here, Lanky. So the way this tool works, it's a little bit, I don't know. This is some strange stuff. But anyways, I'm going to middle click drag the mesh in here like so. And in here. Okay, and then I'm going to select the pelvis because that's the root node for the skeleton. And you could use the root if you wanted to at this point because it's going to, there's no skinning to it anyways. Number of influences. I generally stay around 4, not more than 4. 3 is good because it would be like, okay, this vertex is close to the pelvis, this bone, and maybe that bone, and that way it'll stay within that range. So 3 sometimes, 3 is good to me. 4 is good also. Once you start getting to 5 and 6, first of all, your engine might not handle that very well. You're adding computing that is extra for nothing for these little tiny values. It's not great. So now I'm just going to do this and just watch the show. It's going to go through each bone one by one, and because we deleted some of them, it should be relatively quick. Now at this point we have an actual skin, and no Delta Mush, no cheating, this is real. So this is the actual skin. Okay, that's not bad. It's not bad. Like I said, the button we're going to fix in a moment. And this is looking pretty good. Let's see. Not a bad deal. Pretty good. So when he's going to be dancing, this is going to be where the arm comes down, and we can lift the arm. There's a bit of overlap there. It's really not bad for something we did this quickly. This is not bad. So we can do the neck. So this can be the no, and this can be the yes. I'd say we're in business. This is fine. Maybe we can fix this up a little bit here. Tighten up the shirt, but I'd be like, yeah, there's a few spots I need a little work, but not a big deal. So let's fix up the buttons are going to be a problem because look, if you take this, you bend it like it's staying behind. It's obviously it's not going to work too well because it's how you Delta Mush this. It's an independent poly group that has no connection to the rest. So here's how you can fix that. what I do is, wait a second, where's the tool? There it is. Okay, so what I do is for things like this, if you want to quickly fix it, you can either set it to 100% to like the pelvis, but then if it's stretching out like this, you want it to follow the surface, right? So what you do is you copy with the one weight behind it. So I turn off this and I go into vertex mode, select the vertice. So I'm going to go to the vertice that's close to it, like just that one right there in the back. That's the one that's on the surface. And you can go to skin. You go, wait, that's not it. Skin. I don't want the whole skin. I just want the vertex. Okay, copy vertex weight. And then I'm going to double click the button and I'm going to go skin, paste vertex weights, nothing else, vertex weights. So now if I were to go back to a mesh and look at the paint, you're going to find that it has the same color as what we just took from there. Okay, and we're going to do the same thing on this side. I'm going to go back to vertex. I'm just going to go behind here. I can see this little vertex here. Oh, no. There's one over here, though. Right? Yeah, it's right there. So hopefully you can spot that easy enough. Ideally, your mesh would have something there that you could use that's a little better. You can either grab that one or that one. It doesn't really matter. It's going to be very, very similar. Skin, copy vertex weight, and then double click on one of the buttons, vertices, and then skin, paste vertex weights. And now if I go back to paint and I check it out, it's going to be one solid color and it's going to be what's back there. So now if I test this, like grab this guy and rotate it, it's going to follow the mesh a lot better. It's not perfect, but it'll do for now. Maybe we could have done like a little bit of a we could have used like an average with maybe the top ones, or maybe set that weight to 100% on something. There's a lot of ways you can approach this, but as long as it's good enough, it's close enough, you should be okay. Something like that ought to do it. So if I grab here, I'm just going to do a little fixer-upper over here, just using the shift button to soften things out. Soften it out a little bit over here. Oh yeah, we have buttons over here. Yeah. Okay. Let's just do it quick then. Let's see what we have here. Do we have any vertices that are near enough? Yeah, that one there. Skin, copy vertices, skin, paste vertex weights. Do the same thing over here. It's one of the things that really annoying with, wow. Okay. So I select this, double click here. Now we're back in here. And I can go into that mode. It's painful sometimes when, like, honestly, this is one of the worst parts of Maya. If you want to do things like this. I selected the vertex, right? There. Skin, copy. Double click. Skin, paste. Now if I go back to this, go back to paint. It should be okay. They're not quite the same color, so we'll see how that goes in just a second. So I'll pop out of here. So this isn't going to help me. This will, though. I can live with this. These lines here are not great, though. You might want to fix these up a little. The hard way would be to copy that skin weight and put it to that one, and then it's perfect. But another way of doing it is you just set them to some bone at 100%. That's another way of fixing it. But for the most part, I think we're okay. It's not too bad. And remember, we're seeing the wireframe, so later it'll be more like this kind of thing. Or we're seeing the hard edges. It's not too bad. It really isn't bad at all. I I can live with this for how quickly we did this. We I would fix this kind of stuff if it was a real production, and there's a number of little things that would be fixed up, and also we'd have maybe a jaw or something. But with this, we're mostly okay, and for the time that we spent on it, I mean, we're getting close to the 2 hour mark, but we started from scratch, from nothing, and we have already a skin with properly aligned joints. The second part will be probably not that long to do because we did a good job here and we were clean about everything. Hopefully, you're not tired of hearing my voice, and you'll be okay for part 2 of this. But once you've completed part 2, this is going to be the end of the. Think about it. If you can get this, go from a mesh to a rig, that's pretty good. That's a good skill to have. And you can use this for any number of characters and build on top as a foundation of what your character should be. All right, so I'm going to stop the video here for the first part, and now we're going to deal with the second part.